This right here.
Damn.
All right. Hey, shalom, shalom. Akim, shalom. First and foremost, we'll say call halal Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shah, Bahashim, Rakah HaKodash. I'm saying double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. I'm saying much peace, love, and salutations to you brothers out there pushing the word of sincerity and truth. Brother Ariala. I got the brother Aquari Kwam with me, actually.
Shalom.
Yeah, man. And we're coming with another Algo. This one is kind of like an extension of what's been going on. As everybody see, there's riots going on. There was just an announcement of another quarter of increased inflation that was more than expected. For some people, it was more than expected or more than projected. But it's leading to what we talked about, how when you look at the stock market and when you look at these emerging economies, like these smaller economies, it's like the blood pressure. You know what I'm saying? When you take your blood pressure, it's giving you an indication of how your heart is working, or how you or the clogs that might be in the arteries. And so when we see these nations like Sri Lanka and other nations around about start to tumult and riot and do these type of things, it's just the beginning of what we're going to see emerging in more markets. Okay. Did you have any opening statements?
No, Khan, this is exactly what it is, man. You know.
Yeah. So today, what we want to do is talk a little bit about inflation. We want to talk about its effects on the global markets. We want to talk about the U.S. dollar and why the U.S. dollar is actually getting stronger and what that means. We want to talk about how Esau uses these situations on both sides, because a lot of people talk about the BRICS nations, and we were just talking about this, and they talk about the International Monetary Fund as if it's some type of global battle when it's a coordinated effort. Even though that coordinated effort will lead to them going to war against each other, the actual diplomacy within it is still New World Order diplomacy. You know what I'm saying? And so it's just fighting over who's going to have a controlling interest in what. That's what these bankers, that's what these elites are doing. That's what's happening right now. But the people themselves on the ground are the ones being taken advantage of. And they're going to be the ones that's losing their damn mind because they can't eat. And so we're going to see these prophecies hit piece by piece by piece. It's like a whole bunch of tentacles into one beast, right? And so we want to go in on that. All right. I'm going to play a few clips. I'm going to read some articles. Brothers, as usual, when I play these clips, when I read these articles, please put comments in the comment boards that relate. We will be going back and forth through prophecies and going through the breakdown of these markets and stuff like that. Okay. So no further ado. Let me start with the first point. First one I had pulled up. This right here.
Beautiful view outside of Mika's condo.
All right, 27 past the hour. We learned moments ago that last month consumer prices rose 9.1% compared to this time last year. That was worse than economists expected. Joining us now, columnist and editor for the New York Times Deal Book and co-anchor of CNBC's Squawk Box, Andrew Ross Sorkin. Good to have you.
Andrew, and if you're president of the United States, there are 4 words you do not want said consecutively. Worst inflation since 1981. I mean, we're going back to the days of Paul Volcker, baby. That's not good news for anybody.
We are, and what you're seeing
in an even worse case politically is it's the cost that we all know and frankly that capture the middle and the bottom of the most. We're talking about rent, which is higher. We're talking about gas, which we know is higher. We're talking about food, which is higher. And so you're seeing these things be persistent. It is not changing at the moment. There's a little bit of good news, only in that we've seen gas prices over the last couple of weeks start to come down just a little bit. That's not something you're seeing in that report because these are backward looking. But nonetheless, I think this is going to raise lots of questions, both politically in Washington, but also, of course, what does the Federal Reserve do? There is an expectation, as we all know, that they are going to hike interest rates to try to tamp this down. The question is, do they have to move, as you referenced, Paul Volcker, do they have to move aggressively and really try to tamp things down?
Right. And so basically with inflation means that the prices of things are going up or the worth of your dollar is going down. Now, this is relative to the United States of America, because when you look at the US dollar with these rate hikes, what the rate hikes do is they make it harder for people to borrow money, and they incentivize people to save money, meaning you will get more yield if you buy a treasury bond. You will get more yield on it. So you save your dollars. You store up your dollars. You take dollars out of the economy, boosting its worth. So you decrease supply, and as you have a steady demand, when you have a decreased supply of something and you have a steady or rising demand, the price or the worth of it goes up. So the worth of the US dollar out in the markets is going up. Well, this is causing catastrophic effects on outside economies, more than even what's happening here in America. So here in America, the your dollar strength is high. It's just that everything is so out of whack because of all the money they pumped into the economy. You still getting hit with 9%, 10% inflation. Well, other nations are getting hit with 40 and 50% monthly inflation. Let me say that again. Other countries are getting hit with 40 and 50% monthly inflation. We're complaining about 9%.
And Salaki, there's a group of statistics. I don't know if you heard of the shadow government statistics.
Mm-mm.
It's like a alternative group because basically with the CPI that they bring out, it's kind of flawed. They always try and bring it down. So the according to the shadow government statistics, the actual inflation is closer to about 17-18%
Look at
in
that.
reality.
Yep. And it's even worse going
Even
around.
worse, yeah.
It's even worse in the extended other smaller nations, man. So America's getting hit with real inflation of about 15 to 20%. Meanwhile, these other nations are getting hit from 50 to 70% inflation on buying things. Okay, and this is going to create massive chaos. Massive chaos is getting ready to come. Okay, piece by piece by piece. You best to believe it, and it's not going to get any better. All right. Now, this right here is on Barron's.com. It says the US dollar hits 20-year high as investors dump stocks. Why that's not good. All right. This was written June 13th, right? So let me see. This is going to let me read this. Oh, look at them being an asshole, bro. There we go. It says there's at least one asset rising to multi-decade highs as stocks head into a bear market and cryptocurrencies hit their lowest levels in 18 months. Cold hard cash. The U.S. dollar index, which measures the greenback against a basket of 6 peers, surged to above 104.7 on Monday. It's the dollar's highest level relative to major peers since late 2002, when the index traded above 105 for much of the period in the 2 years prior. The dollar's stunning recent rise, with the index beginning 2022 at below 96, comes amid the highest inflation in 40 years and surging U.S. bond yields, which support a more valuable greenback. The bond yield rate is what we talk about when we say Fed hikes. Fed hikes, okay? It says with higher yields and markets running for cover, the U.S. dollar soared. U.S. equity index futures have continued their sell-off this morning. Oil continues to fall. The U.S. dollar has risen as Asian currencies play catch-up to Friday's greenback rally. What's behind the recent move? Inflation is at a multi-decade high, and U.S. Consumer Price Index, or CPI, inflation data last Friday showed that rising prices have yet to peak. That heaps pressure on the Federal Reserve to act more aggressively to tighten monetary policy, with expectations rising of even more and possibly bigger interest rate increases to come in the year ahead. Stocks are selling off amid the risk that these policy moves could cause a recession, with bond yields popping in turn as traders demand more returns against government debt, with inflation running so high. With the yields on the 2-year and 10-year U.S. Treasury notes each pushing to new decade highs on Monday, cash is among the winners. See this? It says, but that's not necessarily good news for stock market investors. A strong dollar means multinational companies, among which the U.S. has many, see their international sales worth less at home. Okay, because things get more expensive, so people buy less. It's harder for people to buy United States goods if the dollar is so expensive and their currency is getting weaker. This is why Sri Lanka can't afford shit, because their currency is getting weaker up against all the things that's in the market that's priced in USD. All right. So as the US continues to raise Fed rates, which it has to do it to stem off inflation, to slow down the prices of things going up, it creates a strong dollar. Now, when everything's priced in dollars, everything goes up internationally, making it very
Even your
difficult.
debt,
Say
because
it
a lot
again.
of the debt is even a lot of the debt is denominated in dollars.
Exactly. Exactly. So all these nations are struggling to get their hands on USD. And we want to talk about the implications of that piece by piece by piece in this lesson. Okay. Did you have any scriptures? Did you have anything?
Yeah, I had yeah, scripture here. Isaiah 29:15. It says, "Woe unto them that seek deep to hide their counsel from the Lord, and their works are in the dark. They say, Who seeth us, and who knoweth us?" And that's basically going into the elites of Esau, because they know exactly what they're doing. They're manipulating the situation, and what they do is they try and make everything kind of simple, where you're only looking at one thing. So like the whole thing about inflation, they try and make it like the inflation is only happening because they printed all those dollars, but it's really a double whammy what's happening right now. Not
Mm-hmm.
only had they printed a load of dollars, which for a time caused the worth of the dollar to go down, but we know it's going up now, but the actual goods themselves becoming rare, because the price of a good is also based upon supply and demand. And ever since the thing that we can't speak about happened, what you've noticed is around the world there's been a supply chain issue, and that's had a knock-on effect from raw materials to secondary and tertiary goods. So now you're seeing the knock-on effect of that is
Mm-hmm.
a lot of goods are are rare. They're becoming lower in supply. So then what happens if there's a bidding war for these products? The price goes up. So
Con.
it's not, it's even though right now you see they're saying, oh, the inflation and all that. How can you have high inflation and at the same time the dollar's being stronger? Because yeah, the dollar's getting stronger, but you're still gonna have inflation because you've got a shortage of wheat, you got a shortage of fertilizer, you got a shortage of gasoline, you got a shortage of all these different things for various reasons. So that's gonna drive the prices of up no matter what the Federal Reserve does. Even if they did nothing, the price would go up. The price of beef would go down, then it will go up because there's less cows. You see?
Mm-hmm.
So the increase in the prices is inevitable, and it's only going to continue as the global food supply and all the different supply chains get more and more tight. If you see what I'm saying. And they
Con.
know that. They're not really talking about that side of things as to why the price of everything's going up.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. I'm gonna read this in the NLT, the Deuteronomy 25:13. You must use accurate scales when you weigh out merchandise, and you must use full and honest measures. Yes, always use honest weights and measures so that you may enjoy long life in the land the Lord your power is giving you. All who cheat with dishonest weights and measures are detestable to the Lord your power. And that's what we see happening out in the global economy is dishonest weights and measures is causing the economy globally to teeter-totter. It's causing it to decouple and fall apart. And, you know, what we're seeing right now with this stuff going on in Sri Lanka and everything like that is just a little bit. Just a little bit. Now, I'm going to play this clip because this right here is the beginning of what we're going to see happening all over different parts of Asia, all over Africa, all over South America. Those nations, those little smaller, weaker, not like when it comes to economy nations, are going to be the first ones to fall apart. The small nations that provide the raw goods and materials for the world. So they sell their raw goods and materials to the United States, Europe, and China for it to be processed and manufactured. Okay. But these nations are taken advantage of and being sucked up by two entities, the BRICS nations and the IMF. And as these nations get more and more and more in upheaval like this, they're going to beg for help. They're going to beg to get back to some type of normalcy. Okay. Do you have anything else? I'm going to play this clip.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's key to note that in these nations, they really live on the edge. Like majority of people, like a 10% rise in food cost means they don't eat because they don't have that 10%. These these people don't have disposable income where they could say, well, you know, I just won't go out clubbing this Friday. You know what I mean? Like these people in South America, Africa, a lot of these people, the inflation, it means you got to choose which one of your children are gonna eat. You know, it's serious. So that's gonna cause these riots, man. Because people ain't gonna be sitting there on TikTok, if you know what I mean. They hungry.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, this scripture right here that the kingdom is within put up Sirach 12:17. If adversity come upon thee, thou shalt find him there first, and though he pretend to help thee, yet shall he undermine thee. When you read up, it says, never trust thine enemy. All right, I want y'all to remember this scripture as we continue to go through these ideas, okay? Y'all know how the algos go. It starts out slow, but all the ideas start to build upon itself to come to a final point.
A state of emergency has been declared, and the Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe has told the military to do whatever is necessary to restore order after protesters stormed his office complex. The President, Gotabaya Rajapaksa, has now fled the country as Sri Lanka suffers from the worst economic crisis in decades. Tens of thousands took to the streets to demonstrate against the President and the administration that he's led. They're all being blamed now for allowing this crisis to grow. Sri Lanka's economy is suffering shortages of food and fuel. The currency has lost nearly half its value on the financial markets. Our South Asia correspondent, Rajini Vajanathan, camera journalist Jack Garland, and producer Scarlett Barton.
And Sri Lanka is completely bankrupt. They have no money. They're through.
Have spent the day among the crowds outside the Prime Minister's office in Colombo.
Their target heavily guarded. Their mood determined. As news spread that Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe had just been made acting president,
They're throwing that water, but they need to hold on to that shit.
crowds gathered in front of his office. One of the few government buildings not yet occupied by protesters.
Protesters are chanting that Ranil Wickremesinghe, Prime Minister, is a thief. They don't just want President Gotabaya Rajapaksa to step down, they want the whole political class to leave, and they want to change.
And this is how they're pushing for that change. A mass movement born out of economic hardship, sending a message to those in power.
We don't want violence and we don't want to hit or something to that prime minister who trying to be a president right now.
Man, that's that nigga that pick up the phone when you be trying to get something fixed. That's him. That's who you be talking to.
We only want, please resign.
But it didn't take long for security forces.
Do you know how serious it gotta get for you to get out in the streets like that? Okay, and we're gonna see more and more and more of that all across the world as these countries continue to fall apart. Same thing, like I pulled up gas prices in Peru. Gas prices in Peru.
For days, chaos in Peru. Roadblocks on fire as protesters throw rocks and sticks at police. Authorities shooting tear gas into crowds as they march towards the legislative palace in Lima. The growing tension as President Pedro Castillo imposed a curfew Tuesday to quell recent anti-government protests over rising gas and food prices.
Hago un llamado a la calma, a la serenidad.
Cálmate.
La protesta social es un derecho constitucional, pero debe hacerse dentro del marco de la ley.
Less than 24 hours later, amid escalating manifestations, that curfew dropped.
Lo único que podemos hacer ahorita es unirnos y salir todos adelante.
Cansados del mal manejo, cansados de que nos esté gobernando alguien que no sabe gobernar.
The government confirming at least 4 people have died, 3 of them over the weekend in the city of Huancayo, inland where protests began.
La policía.
And see, this is a thing that people in America don't understand how much extra America has. It's ridiculous how decadent America is. When you take away a man and you take away a man's sandwich and he can't eat, he will turn back into the old natural state, warrior state man. If you take away a man's ability to feed himself, he will turn into a hunter. He will. And that's what we're going to see. Systematically, all across the world, is going to be a forced injection of masculine hunting as taking care of yourself and your family becomes extremely difficult. And these are all the scriptures that we read about, 2nd Ezra 15, 2nd Ezra 16, and brothers don't mind posting those scriptures. When a man, he's not going to have no regard towards the princes and the nobles. They're going to attack. They're gonna protest. They're gonna attack. They're gonna get mad. You take a man's sandwich. This is what he will turn to. Okay, it's just there's so much of an abundance of sandwiches in America. The idea of this is ridiculous in America because you can just walk outside and go to a 7-Eleven. You can just walk outside and go to McDonald's. You can just walk outside and there's just plenteousness all around you. Okay? But it's going to come here. It's going to come to America. It's going to come to Europe. It's going to come. Even the first ones that you might see default might be Italy, then Spain, Portugal. Okay? First, all these other little ones are going to start falling. All across Central South America, all across Africa. Okay? All across these little places over in Asia. Then you're going to start to see that beast system come against each other. Okay? Piece by piece by piece. Now, the brother this morning, GMS Vegas Sit Down posted this. Well, I saw it this morning. Uproars of the people is happening worldwide. Must see. Now, you go through, it's showing you all the uproars of the people, man. Like that right there is a dope view of Sri Lanka, how they surrounded the spot. India, they're having farmer wars there because they can't afford to farm. Okay. And like I just showed you Peru, this is Ecuador. Same thing, gas, food prices. Okay, this is Albania right here. All across the world. It's just going to increase. Okay? Due to the cost of living crisis, protests are happening around the world. But again, the media turns a blind eye. These are all the little different places across the world where we're seeing people have food, fuel, energy, riots. Okay?
Yeah, you don't see when the Ukraine crisis happened. Oh, we need to address this. We need to send this amount of aid and buy this amount of weapons. Meanwhile, the global food system is being decimated as we speak, and this is not on the top of the agenda. They're completely ignoring the state of the food security.
That's right.
Showing you this is it's on purpose, man.
It's on purpose, man. This is a grand scheme. Okay? Brother put Proverbs 29:2, when the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice. But when the wicked bear rule, the people mourn. We're seeing people mourn. Okay? We're seeing people mourn, right? Matthew 24:12, and because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. That's right. That's right. It's just gonna get worse and worse and worse. Second Ezra 16:22. For many of them that dwell upon earth shall perish of famine, and the other shall escape, and the other that escape the hunger shall the sword destroy. More and more and more. Sirach 34:22. He that taketh away his neighbor's living slayeth him, and he that defraudeth the laborer of his hire is a bloodshedder. Woo! That was a bad one, bro. That was a bad one. That was a bad one, man. And there's many more on the comment boards. We'll come back to the comment boards here in a second. Okay. Did you have any other points? I got a little bit more that I want to go in on.
The only thing I got left is that one you wanted on the emerging markets.
Oh yeah. Yeah. We come into that right now. All right. So what I wanted to talk about is I have this real quick. I'm not gonna read this whole thing required quorum because I'm gonna let you read the article that you got and I'll pull up your page. But this is an article on Breaks News saying 2022 is going to be a tough year for Latin America. This was written in December 19th, 2021. Let's see. The closing of 2021 cannot come fast enough for Latin America. The region has been hit hard by 19 and its legacy of economic depression and political polarization. While many of the region's economies began to recover after devastation in 2020, improvements have been slow, not nearly enough to address increasing poverty and national income reductions, or reverse the declines of the previous year. And so this is just another example of them listing some of the countries like Uruguay, Mexico, Brazil, like Bolivia. We see Peru. We saw Ecuador. All of these little small these commodity nations. It's going to get worse, man. It's going to get worse. Okay. Now, you know what? You know what? That's fine. Let's go to the article that you got, and I'm gonna come back to this. This is one
Okay,
last.
fine. Let me share my screen.
Yes, sir.
So I got this article here from Investopedia. It hold on. It says how a strong US dollar can hurt emerging markets. Right. So those are like some of the countries that we've already mentioned earlier. Those are the emerging markets. So we're just gonna hit the key takeaways. It says a strong US dollar generally harms the economies of emerging nations. The emerging markets are reliant on foreign investment and foreign capital, both of which can evaporate when the dollar gains in value. All right. So basically, you got less foreign investors pumping dollars into the system in those countries that they could then use to buy products. It says at the same time, higher interest rates make it harder for emerging market nations and companies to pay their dollar-denominated debts. So a lot of these guys don't have fixed rate loans. So as the dollar increases in value, all right, it increases their debt, increases their liability, it squeezes them, so they run out of liquidity. That then is the same thing. They can't buy the things they need. It says the worst case scenario is a greater risk of default, which we're going to see a few of these nations defaulting for sure. A weak US dollar creates an incentive for companies to invest in emerging markets. All right, so that's not happening right now. So this is adding to the collapse of these emerging markets. That's pretty much it on that.
Yeah. So the stronger dollars is adding to the collapse of these emerging markets, and we're starting to see them go into a whole state of chaos, piece by piece by piece, and it's just going to get worse as inflation continues to increase. Okay, so. I'll go to this real quick. Now, I want to highlight Sri Lanka because Sri Lanka is an example of what all these nations are going to get ready to do. I'm going to play this clip. I'm actually going to play a good portion of it because I want you to see the progression of mindset, okay?
Sri Lanka's Prime Minister says his country is now bankrupt and that there's no immediate end to the current economic crisis. Sri Lankans are facing hardships on many fronts. Petrol supplies have dried up because foreign currency reserves to pay for fuel imports have run out. Prices have soared with...
You hear that? Foreign currencies reserves have run out. What's a foreign currency reserve? The US dollar. You've used it all up. You don't have no more. And you're not bringing in enough money to get more. Your credit card ran out. You through.
Yeah, nobody wants them Sri Lankan currency, man.
Ain't nobody want that shit.
Hey, that currency was weak before because I know a lot of Sri Lankans. Them and these dudes, they go down there and you could spend like £1 and get like a full service in the barbershop, man, massage, everything. So their currency was weak from before. So now it must be crazy.
Yeah, you go in them over $2 and get treated like a king. All right.
Food inflation now running at about 57% annually. More than
57% food inflation. Sheesh.
Thirds of Sri Lankan households say they're eating less as a result. Schools and offices are currently closed to keep people off the streets. People are angry and frustrated, and they're blaming politicians for the crisis, especially President Gotabaya Rajapaksa and his family, which dominate politics. Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe informed Parliament of Sri Lanka's insolvency on Tuesday. He said the economic crisis would be around until at least the end of next year. He added that bailout talks with the IMF depended on finalising a debt restructuring plan with creditors in the coming weeks. Here's more of his...
I want you to remember what he just said. So now that the country goes bankrupt, who do they have to run to for a loan? They have to go to the International Monetary Fund. And then you're going to have other nations. They're going to go to the BRICS. They're going to go to China and them. But the policies that's coming out of China, brothers, does the policies coming out of China, or is it freedom? Or they're fighting against the Illuminati in China? Or does China have the same type of totalitarian surveillance system government that the U.S. is starting to implement? What's the difference? China is moving faster into a global surveillance system. Because they have a communist system. They don't have to go through all the checks and balances of democracy. They don't have to scare you into voting it in. They just do it. Right?
I got a scripture.
Let's go, champ.
This is the book of 2nd Ezra, the 15th chapter, and the where was I? I lost my way there. Yeah, the 46th verse. It says, "And thou, Asia, Thou art partaker of the hope of Babylon, and art the glory of her person. Woe be unto thee, thou wretch, because thou hast made thyself like unto her, and hast decked thy daughters in whoredom, that they might please and glory in thy lovers, which have always desired to commit whoredom with thee. Thou hast followed her that is hated in all her works and inventions. Therefore saith the Lord, I will send plagues upon thee, widowhood, poverty, famine, sword, and pestilence, to waste thy houses with death and destruction.
That's right, man. So thou Babylon, Asia's a partaker of the hope of Babylon. You see these Asian, the China and the BRICS nations, they're not doing nothing. Russia didn't say no to the jab. They didn't say no. They shut down everything just like everybody else. Okay, same as these other nations.
Yeah, their banking system, it operates as one. There's the same concepts.
Exactly.
The same problems, the same bubbles. They blow up massive. They got a massive housing bubble over there. In fact, right now in China, you currently already having bank runs, but they're able to control it a little bit better than America because they have that totalitarianism already in place to a certain extent. But there's been reports of bail-ins already, where certain Chinese banks have just confiscated people's deposits. You know, because why? Their economic system has the same flaws as America and Europe. All these countries have instituted the exact same system, which is a fraudulent system, which in the end implodes on itself. You know, it's a global ideal. You will own nothing. So yeah, they're all part of the game.
That's right. That's right, man. And so, just to back up what you're saying, bro. Just to back up what you're saying. Literally was watching this morning.
There you go.
Major Chinese cities to ask banks to unfreeze their deposit accounts.
So they luring people in to put their deposits into these banks, and then what the brother's talking about as far as a bail-in, you put your money in there, and they take your money and hold it. you throw your money into that pit, and they bailed in your money. They're keeping the depositors' money, man.
That's coming to America.
That's right. That's right.
By heavy-handed security personnel and remain at risk of losing all of their savings. 4 big Chinese banks have frozen millions of dollars worth of deposits in April, telling customers they were upgrading their internal systems. But by now, the population has lost their trust in the institutions and the government. According to economists and experts, the country's huge $54 trillion financial system, which is more than double the size of assets across U.S. commercial banks, China is on the precipice of a serious debt crisis.
Boom. And so they're using debt as a weapon to acquire all of these small little nations, governments, and natural resources and systems, piece by piece by piece. And they're doing the same thing in the West. The East is doing the same thing. They're not doing anything opposite. It's the same thing. That's why this nation here, Sri Lanka, is having to run to the IMF. And we're going to talk about that here in a second.
His remarks to lawmakers. Our country has held talks with the IMF on many occasions before, but this time the situation is different.
He's going to explain why this time the situation is different. Listen, those of you who tuning in right now, it says 116, listen to this part right here.
From all those previous occasions, in the past, we have held discussions as a developing country. But now, the situation is different. We are now participating in the negotiations as a bankrupt country. Therefore, we have to face a more difficult
What y'all think that means? He said previously we would do negotiations with the IMF as a developing country. But now we're discussing things as a bankrupt country, which makes it more difficult. There's going to be a lot more rules, regulations, and controls. That's why the president had to be ousted. The president ain't just being ousted because he's running away from the people. The president's being ousted because the International Monetary Fund said, "Get the hell up out of here. We got who we want to put up in there." And you best believe that's what's going to happen. And you're going to start to see these systematic governmental economic takeovers happen all across Asia, all across Africa, all across Central and South America, as these nations go bankrupt and are forced to take in loans. And they're going bankrupt because they're not going to have foreign currency reserves. They are going to be depleted, so their nation cannot buy goods and services that they crucially need in the market. They're not going to have enough US dollars. Okay? Now, as this begins to continue to strain things out, eventually you'll see Europe fall. And that's when you're going to start to see the 10 horns hate the whore. Things are going to speed up. Once the West starts to get touched with these certain issues, things will speed up even more. Okay? Do you have anything out?
Yeah, I was gonna say that's why the MOTB is gonna be a global thing, because the citizens of each individual country, they're gonna basically, have to give up everything to this debt problem, but then they're gonna have a new system ready to roll out. New system. That's why they got this new financial. They call it the quantum financial system. They got lined up, and then they're gonna start issuing out this UBI, this universal basic income. It's gonna be a global thing. It's gonna be the global solution.
That's right.
All these different governments are gonna sign on to it. That's why they're all preparing that infrastructure. Because it's gonna be like, okay, boom, we're all down and out. Here we'll have a new currencies. New system. It won't be based on the dollar anymore, and everyone get this universal basic income, but you have to be chipped and all this business.
Yes, that's it. So you got to imagine when you go into the store every day, because every day the prices of stuff is going up. So every time you get some money in your pocket, you got to immediately go get something. So your value against that price, against that commodity, is reserved somehow. We're just getting started, man. We are just getting started.
Let's go now to Colombo and speak to journalist Marlon Arisinga. Welcome to DW News Asia. The government says Sri Lanka is now bankrupt. Why is it bankrupt, and how much worse can it get?
Hi, thank you for having me. Yeah, I think it's safe to say that we've hit rock bottom. But with every passing day, it feels like we are, sinking even further. So it's more of an economic, I guess, like an economic debt spiral. How did we get here? That's been discussed extensively over the last few months. And, we have also become like a cautionary tale or like a horror story to other countries. In brief, the main causes are corruption, severe economic mismanagement, political incompetence and arrogance, and misguided policies, like the overnight chemical fertilizer ban last year. Which is why, in addition to all these crises, we also have a looming food crisis to look forward. And currently, I'm experiencing power cut right now. So this is the state of things, or state of affairs right now in Sri Lanka.
You've touched on it a bit there, these stories of desperation and suffering, which is sort of veering into a humanitarian crisis. How is this situation affecting people?
Yeah, you're right. Undeniably, it is a humanitarian crisis. There's a shortage of life-saving drugs and medical equipment. The majority of small businesses have completely closed down.
The majority of small businesses have completely closed down. So the larger corporate entities take over the issuance of goods and services. And we're starting to see that here. You're going to start to see the shrinkage of ownership because you can't afford it.
Yeah, that already started with the big C. It's only going to get worse.
Businesses, informal workers, and daily wage earners are undergoing immense suffering, because of the skyrocketing inflation. And as human rights activists have pointed out, in addition to a humanitarian crisis, this has also turned into a human rights crisis. Just a few hours ago, peaceful protesters were arrested, and I'm getting reports that even about 20 minutes back, protesters were tear gassed, right? So, and just a few days ago, we had a footage of an army officer kicking a citizen at a fuel shed. And this man was not even a protester, he was just simply asking some questions. So and we see this kind of incidents over the last few, over the last few weeks, of police brutality and armed forces brutality. So it is a humanitarian crisis as well as a human rights crisis right now.
A human rights crisis too. People, of course, want a way out. The IMF and the World Bank, though, are hesitant to come to the rescue of Sri Lanka. Why is that?
Well, the Prime Minister actually mentioned in Parliament yesterday that the first round of discussions with the IMF has been a success. And but the assistance depends on a debt restructuring program.
Their assistance depends on a debt restructuring program. When you look at these debt restructuring programs, it's not just we want you to spend, 35% of your gross domestic product of your income on this and that. No, it's like a restructuring program. We want you to bring these people into your economic councils. We want these people in office. We want these rules and regulations to be put on your banks, and your regulations that's going to be put on your banks. This is going to lead to, this is how you're going to issue out loans to businesses. So these businesses are going to have to follow these guidelines in order to get these loans from you. The money that we're going to give you, that you're going to loan out to these other businesses to get started, they're going to have to follow these rules. And those rules are going to lead to the MOTB. And that's how they do it, man. They entrap you by debt. Okay? Now, when you look at this right here, and the guy talking about Moab on the comment board, if you keep doing it, I'm going to block you. Okay? If you keep doing it, I'm going to block you. Because we ain't talking about that right now, bro. There's plenty of videos going into Ruth and Moab and stuff, man. Grow the hell up. All right? More you guys that can't seem to get with the program, you're going to get blocked. All right? Back to it. Debt trap diplomacy, right? It says debt trap diplomacy is a term in international finance which describes a creditor country or institution extending debt to a borrowing nation partially or solely to increase the lender's political leverage. All right? This is what we got going on. The creditor country is said to extend excessive credit to a debtor country with the intention of extracting economic or political concessions when the debtor country becomes unable to meet its repayment obligations. So this has already happened to Sri Lanka. They've already been living off of debt and they failed. So now it's going to get worse. Did you have something, Mark?
When you finish on this, I've found some figures going into the food inflation. Quite interesting, but
absolutely.
When you're finished on the
absolutely, it says the conditions of the loans are often not publicized and benefit the lender. The borrowed money commonly pays for contractors and materials sourced from the creditor country. Although allegations of debt trap diplomacy are commonly associated with China, they have also been applied to the International Monetary Fund. Both allegations, however, are disputed. The term debt trap diplomacy began to be used in the United States government documents during the Trump administration. There you go, my man Trump. A number of U.S. government documents refer to it, and including the 2020 Department of State report, The Elements of China Challenge, right? And that's how it goes, man. Both the IMF and World Bank have been accused of predatory lending practices to keep emerging economies in debt, including demanding structural adjustment programs as a condition for loans, often to governments who see these loans as a last resort, pressuring for privatization and exerting undue influence over the central banks. See that? The Committee of Abolition of Illegitimate Debt wrote, the World Bank and IMF have systematically made loans to states as a means of influencing their policies. The IMF has used geopolitical considerations rather than exclusively economic conditions. Yes, I'm just saying
No, I didn't. No.
It said rather than exclusively economic conditions to decide which countries receive loans. In 2020, Oxfam reported that the IMF was using its power through pandemic relief loans to impose austerity on poor countries. The IMF conditions have forced recipients to cut healthcare spending, hampering their response to the jab or whatever. All right, and so I'm just saying all of that to highlight how, and then look, when you talk about Africa-China relations, how about China basically was taking over that, and Kenya, Uganda, Latin America, same thing. All right, same thing. Boom, now it's bringing up Sri Lanka, and it's Pakistan, Malaysia, Maldives, Laos, Philippines, Indonesia. Now we across Europe. All right, we're gonna start to see this type of stuff come to the forefront as inflation continues to increase, food and fuel prices ridiculously get out of hand, and these nations cannot afford to just exist. They can't afford it. Finished. What you got, Doc?
Khan, I was just looking up some information here. On this food inflation numbers. Where is it? Let me share my screen. Can you see that?
Got you.
Right. Yeah, I was just looking at these numbers, and it's like you can see these countries are already in the midst of turmoil. Lebanon, they're at what 364% food inflation. Damn. Zimbabwe, Venezuela is at 155. Turkey, which is a European nation. Sri Lanka's at 80%. Argentina 64. So there's quite a few countries that's quite high as it stands for food inflation, and it's only going to get worse. And a lot of everyone's going to be going up. If you go down, the ones near the bottom, most countries are over 10% food inflation right now. You've only got a few down the bottom that's below 10%, and they're going to start going up. The same UK is 8.6, but I don't believe that at all. It's more than that. It's getting costly here to do anything. Like 3 pieces of chicken and chips, like £2, man. Come on. No, I mean 3 wings, 3 little wings. Piss take. Right? Now I found this other one on Ice Age Farmer. Right now, brothers in Texas are feeling that heat. You got a massive drought happening, and the corn is getting baked.
Yeah.
So there goes your corn crop. The cattles are being culled. So what does that do for? Well, with the cattle culling, what it actually does is it brings down the price in short term.
Yeah, I saw the video you sent out. That was very informative.
Yeah, because that same thing kind of happened during the Big C. Every time there's a massive crisis, the cattle farmers, if they can't take care of their cattle, they sell them. But the thing is, when you sell those cattle, it's hard to replace them. So what you have is a short-term glut of meat on the market, which causes a short-term decrease in price. However, that meat will all get eaten up or whatever and used, and then you're gonna have a massive increase because you're gonna have a supply shortage of meat, right? So this is what is all this gonna do to food inflation? This drought that's happening, and they're not the only one. You see what's happening in where is it, Netherlands right now? All the
Mhm.
farmers are protesting because they're being shut down by the government itself. And this one I found here just came out today.
Sorry, I
Argentina's
had to remove the spot from our feast, man. Like fucking
yeah,
niggas, man.
zapping.
I
Yeah,
said I had to, man. Put the raid on the comment boards. Always some nigga with a regular coon name, Maurice, that want to come tell us how to break down the scriptures. But subscribe to everybody and watching like a damn weirdo. But you got it, bro.
right. This is Argentina's 2022 to 2023 wheat production estimate was lowered by 800,000 metric tons,
Woo!
right? By the Rosario Grain Exchange amid a reduction in planted area due to dryness and drought. So, I mean, we're showing you that this is only going to get worse, man.
Yep, that's it.
This is,
That's
yeah,
it.
go on.
Look at that. This is only going to get worse. What we're seeing happening in Sri Lanka and all these little small little nations, it's just a small little tip of the iceberg of what we're gonna see emerge here soon. Okay,
Yeah,
look
real
at the food
soon.
inflation at these nations, man.
Yeah, it's crazy. And then a lot of these countries, people can't afford that. I think I read somewhere like in Mexico, like 7 out of 10 households, they can't afford it. Like the food inflation's crazy. These people cannot afford 10, 20% food inflation because their wages are not increasing.
God,
You know what I'm
brother,
saying? Like, it's crazy. Look, Egypt 20%. Like, so all these places are gonna be rioting.
go up to the top. Where's the worst?
Yeah, it was at 364.
Shit.
And remember, Lebanon, that's where they blew up that storage facility, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And you
And you
see
see
what's
them,
happening. And look. Sri Lanka is number what, 5 or 6 on the list,
yeah.
and they're going nuts. So imagine what's going on in Lebanon, Zimbabwe, Venezuela, Turkey, Sri Lanka, Argentina.
Mm.
Keep going.
You got Iran on that list, Syria,
Suriname.
Ghana, because remember, Ghana's just come up in the news. They're at 30%.
So by the end of this year, they're going to be in 60, 70%, maybe even more.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I guarantee you they're not increasing their currency reserves. It's going down.
Mm-hmm.
So all of these nations are going to be literally locked in crisis by the end of this year. What happens when the fuel prices, because now everybody's having to switch to coal, right? What
Mm.
happens when the winter comes? This is going to
Yep.
be one of the most brutal winters in the history in our history since we've been alive.
Yep. Because that's gonna push the price of food up more. It's a man. It's famine is real. I mean, the scripture tells you many in the second just the 16th chapter. Many of them that escape the sword shall the famine destroy. So we know that the famine is going to be very significant. The lack of bread. You know, I mean, I had one here in Sri Lanka where they said the bakeries are about to run out of bread. You know, it's very good to study what's happening in Sri Lanka right now. Another thing that was happening was people were shopping in the supermarket and the supermarket didn't have no electricity. I don't know if you saw that image.
Oh, I didn't see it.
They didn't have any electricity because obviously they can't afford the the fuel, for the electricity. So they're having rolling blackouts. But when you have rolling blackouts and you got a supermarket, that means all the food that's in the freezer, that that's gone. All the food that needs refrigerating, all the food that needs being frozen, that's gonna be gone. If you got food in your house and it's frozen and you ain't got electricity for 2 days, that's gone. You don't live in the Antarctica. You can't stick that outside. So all these things are everything's just gonna add to the lack of bread, the lack of resources that the scriptures prophesy will happen. It's just right now people can't see it because they're so used to abundance that even these little moments where they go into a shop and they can't get the things that they have or they want, might be an alternative. They'll turn a blind eye to it, thinking, "Oh, things are just gonna get better. It's okay. It's just temporary." It's not temporary. Things are gonna get worse because all these things are compounding in on themselves. The energy crisis, the supply chain crisis, everything is leading from one thing to another and then leading back on itself like a spiral, downward spiral. You know. So yeah, I just wanted to show that out. That's all good.
No, that's good stuff, man. It really just highlights everything that we've been talking about here today and really kind of going in on, read this, GMS down under put second Ezra 16:21. Behold, victuals shall be so good cheap upon earth that they shall think themselves to be in good case, and even then shall evils grow upon earth, sword, famine, and great confusion. All right. And so, for America, that's still kind of the case with the strength of the dollar. People can still get pretty much what they need. But as we see globally, it's getting worse and worse and worse and worse, man. So I just wanted to really highlight that inflation, the idea behind it, and really show how it leads to this debt trap diplomacy. Where now you're going to start to see these nations, you're going to start to see these institutions being the International Monetary Fund and the Chinese banks, or really BRICS banks. They're going to start to basically put these people into a debt trap. They're going to make them sign on for loans that they can't pay because they're bankrupt. Us puny humans, we can't get a loan. We ain't got nothing to prove. We don't have no income. You ain't got no proof of income. You ain't gonna get no loan. But they'll put these people in these loans. They put these nations in these central banks along with these nations into these loans and bring them all underneath one regulatory umbrella. And that regulatory umbrella is going to lead to the MOTB systems. Okay. That was
Hey, Ark, I just found an article, right, from a website called basicincometoday.com. This is from April the 25th. It said the UN has asked Sri Lanka to introduce a temporary basic income.
Look at that. Look at that. And it's never temporary. It's never temporary. Let's just be real.
There you go. It says the UN has asked Sri Lanka to introduce a temporary basic income and negotiate debt for nature swaps tied to environmental conservation as part of measures to mitigate the country's economic meltdown.
Environmental conservation. What?
Oh, no.
That's the ESG.
That's that forked tongue, innit?
Yeah. What?
It says as Colombo begins talks with the IMF.
There it is.
So that's exactly what we said was gonna happen. They're gonna squeeze these nations and get them to sign up the people for the MOTB system. Because the people ain't gonna have nothing. The middle classes are getting squeezed. Either the upper middle class is what it is. Even here in the UK, the middle class is getting squeezed more and more and more. Everybody's gonna be hurt. Is there anything else on this? Yeah, that's the point, really. They're letting it be known off the bat. Look at that.
That's good stuff right there. Send me that article on WhatsApp.
Okay, Con, I will.
I'll read that, man. But yeah, man, that's all I had, bro. Did you have anything else?
No. That's it, man. This is, brothers, remember the scripture says, "Suddenly shall the full storehouses appear unsown." So these things are happening with. Did someone post that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Remember that. What the way they're gonna play this thing is that it's gonna happen and it's gonna look like it's happened all of a sudden, but really it didn't. If your eyes were open, and your ears were open, and you were not being caught up in entertainment, because that our people are caught up in entertainment. you know, and whatever madness that the media wants people to concentrate on. No one's looking at the farming. No one's looking at, well, what are the farmers are on YouTube and on TikTok crying, but nobody cares. They only care about some crazy black woman talking about, you know, twerking or some stupidness like that. Like, the farmers are actually crying, man. They're like, yo, this is not good.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
but no one's paying attention. And that's why the scripture said that suddenly shall the full storehouses appear unsown, because all of a sudden there are going to be massive shortages in about few months time, and or, you know, 3 months, 6 months, and people are going to be like, well, when did this happen?
Mm-hmm.
You know, how did we get here? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's prophecy, you know.
They're telling you we can't afford the fertilizer, we can't afford the hay, we can't afford to raise no to raise up no goods, you know. So the ranchers, they're crying too. The one video you sent where the rancher was crying, basically.
Yep.
But she was breaking it down. She was like, "We're fucked."
Yeah.
So,
you know, that's what happens. But the average person isn't in contact with these people, so they
right.
wouldn't know the personal stories. You know, they're stuck in the cities, and they don't know where their food comes from. They don't conversate with people where the food comes from. Nobody cares about farmers. Farmers aren't important people.
Kind.
You know. But yeah, that's all I wanted to say, man. You know, it's all prophecy. It's all, you know, how the Lord wants it to unfold. But the scripture says we are children of the day. We're not children of the night. So we see these things unfolding. The average person, they're not gonna see it. They're gonna feel it when it happens. You know.
Absolutely, man. Hey, man. So, you know, with that, man, we want to say call halal Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shah, Bahashem Rakahakodash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Much peace, love, and salutations to you brothers and sisters out there pushing the word, sincerity, and truth, man. Your willingness is edifying. Shalom.
Shalom.